It's a wonder I'm standing here. The voice of Nicole Kidman, trembling with a raw, unvarnished emotion, sliced through the rapturous applause of the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. On the night of March 23, 2003, at the 75th Academy Awards, she stood bathed in a spotlight that felt both like a coronation and an interrogation. As she clutched the heavy golden Oscar for her transformative performance in The Hours, the words hung in the air, heavy with a truth that resonated far beyond the confines of the theater. This was not just the pinnacle of a brilliant career. It was the summit of a brutal, soul-testing, and intensely public climb. This triumphant moment, the ultimate validation from her peers, had been forged in the fires of a devastating public heartbreak, an act of astonishing artistic reinvention, and a display of quiet, steely resilience that had become her defining, almost mythical characteristic. But who was the woman behind the statuette, the artist behind the carefully constructed alabaster poise? From a shy, stuttering girl in the suburbs of Sydney to the unwilling queen of a Hollywood dynasty, and finally, to the most acclaimed actress in the world, her journey is a powerful, epic testament to pain, power, and ultimate self-reclamation. On the surface, Nicole Kidman has always been the embodiment of cool, ethereal perfection, a fashion icon, a movie star of almost otherworldly beauty and serene, untouchable composure. But behind that famous facade, a relentless internal war has raged. It has been a battle against a debilitating shyness, against the suffocating shadow of a superstar marriage that defined and nearly erased her, against the profound loneliness of a globally publicized divorce, and against the ceaseless, unforgiving pressure of the spotlight. Her life is the ultimate story of emotional contrast, of a woman whose greatest professional triumphs were born directly from her deepest personal sorrows. She is an artist who did not just survive her trauma, she metabolized it, transforming the lead of her personal tragedy into the pure gold of her art. That journey begins improbably not in the heart of the entertainment industry, but in a world of intellectual rigor and quiet academic observation. Nicole Mary Kidman was born in Honolulu, Hawaii on June 20th, 1967. A geographical footnote in a life that would be thoroughly Australian. Her parents, Anthony and Janelle Kidman, were a world away from the stereotypical stage parents who populate Hollywood origin stories. Anthony Kidman was a man of science and intellect, a distinguished biochemist and clinical psychologist who would later become a celebrated author and a member of the Order of Australia for his contributions to health sciences. Janelle Kidman was a nursing instructor, a psychotherapist, and a passionate vocal member of the Women's Electoral Lobby, a powerful Australian feminist organization. The Kidman household, first in Washington, D.C., where her father pursued his cancer research, and then permanently in the leafy, affluent suburbs of North Shore, Sydney, was a hotbed of intellectual and political discourse. The dinner table was a place for vigorous, often complex debates on social issues, psychology, and politics. It was an environment that instilled in Nicole a deep intellectual curiosity, a formidable discipline, and a quiet, analytical nature that would later inform the intelligence of her greatest performances. This cerebral, high-achieving upbringing, however, was often at odds with her deeply sensitive and introverted personality. As a child, she was painfully shy, a condition so pronounced that she developed a debilitating stutter that made her dread speaking in class. In the boisterous, sun-drenched surf and sand culture of Australia, the pale-skinned, flame-haired Nicole who had to avoid the sun was a striking but often withdrawn figure. She was an observer. She was a girl who lived intensely in her own inner world. She found her sanctuary not on the beach, but in the structured, disciplined worlds of ballet and drama. The rigorous, physically demanding world of ballet gave her a non-verbal outlet for her intense emotions, a way to communicate through grace and form. But it was in the darkness of a theater, in the sacred space of the stage, that she found her true liberation. The act of becoming someone else, of cloaking herself in the words and emotions of a character, was a release. It was the one place where her shyness and stutter would magically disappear, replaced by a confidence and a command that was startling to behold. Performance was not a pursuit of fame. It was a psychological necessity, a way for a quiet, observant girl to channel her intense inner life into a tangible form. Her passion was undeniable, and her parents, while pragmatic, supported her artistic pursuits. She enrolled at the prestigious Phillip Street Theatre in Sydney, honing her craft alongside other aspiring actors, including a young Naomi Watts, who would become her lifelong friend. She also attended the Australian Theatre for Young People, immersing herself in the work, from mime to vocal technique. It was clear to her teachers that her talent was unique. It was not flashy or theatrical, but quiet, deep, and rooted in a profound emotional intelligence. At 16, with her parents' blessing, she made the decision to leave high school and pursue acting full-time, a choice driven not by a desire for fame, but by a deep, almost academic love for the craft itself. Her career in Australia began almost immediately, a testament to her talent and professionalism. Her first role was in the 1983 holiday film remake, Bush Christmas, a charming if forgettable start. This was quickly followed by a more iconic turn in the quirky action comedy BMX Bandits, 1983. The image of the 16-year-old Kidman with a wild, untamed mane of fiery red curls became a beloved fixture of 1980s Australian pop culture. Throughout the decade, she worked relentlessly, building an impressive resume in Australian film and television, deliberately choosing a wide variety of genres to avoid being typecast. The most significant project of this era, the one that marked her as a serious dramatic actress in her home country, was the 1987 television miniseries Vietnam. Her powerful, emotionally raw performance as a young student protesting the war earned her her first Australian Film Institute AFI Award for Best Actress. It was a critical validation that established her as one of the finest young actors in Australia. But it was a 1989 psychological thriller that would become her passport to the world. Directed by Philip Noyce, Dead Calm was a masterclass in sustained claustrophobic tension. Kidman played Ray Ingram, a woman grieving the death of her child who, along with her husband, played by Sam Neill, finds herself terrorized by a charismatic psychopath, Billy Zane, on a yacht in the vast empty expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The role required her to navigate a complex emotional arc, from catatonic grief to primal terror to finally ferocious self-preservation. Her performance was a tour de force, a mesmerizing display of vulnerability and strength that captivated international audiences and critics. The film became a sleeper hit in the United States, and Hollywood, which had been a distant dream, suddenly became a tangible reality. Her performance in Dead Calm was a direct line to her first American audition for a high-octane racing film that would pair her with the biggest, most powerful movie star in the world. The film was Days of Thunder. The star was Tom Cruise, and Nicole Kidman's quiet, professional life was about to be consumed by a supernova of global fame, a blinding light that would both illuminate her and cast a shadow she would spend the next decade trying to escape. The Hollywood that Nicole Kidman entered in 1989 was a universe operating on a different gravitational field than the artist-driven film scene in Australia. It was a world of immense power, staggering sums of money, and above all, stars. At the absolute center of this universe, its brightest and most powerful sun was Tom Cruise. Following the global, culture-defining success of Top Gun, he was not just an actor. He was a phenomenon, the embodiment of a new kind of blockbuster superstardom. When Kidman, then 22, was called to audition for the female lead in his high-octane racing film, Days of Thunder, it was a meeting of two worlds. The quiet, craft-focused actress from Down Under and the high-wattage megastar of American cinema. The story of their first meeting is now a part of Hollywood lore. Kidman, who stands at a statuesque 5 feet 11 inches, walked into the audition room, a cascade of fiery red curls framing her porcelain features. Cruise, famously shorter, stood up to greet her. According to director Tony Scott and producer Jerry Bruckheimer, the moment they made eye contact, the air in the room changed. The chemistry was immediate, palpable, and so powerful that it rendered the rest of the audition a formality. Instant lust was how Bruckheimer described it. It was a connection that transcended the rather thinly written roles they were meant to play. Kidman was cast as Dr. Claire Lewicki, a neurosurgeon, a role that, on paper, was a standard love interest. But her presence, her intelligence, her striking beauty, and her undeniable connection with the film's star elevated it into something more. The production of Days of Thunder was a massive, testosterone-fueled spectacle, a world of roaring engines, high-stakes action, and the swagger of its super-producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. For Kidman, a relative unknown in America, it was a baptism by fire into the heart of the Hollywood machine. But the real story, the one that captivated the world, was the whirlwind, high-profile romance that ignited on its set. Cruise was at the end of his first marriage to actress Mimi Rogers. Kidman was suddenly thrust from the anonymity of a working actress into the blinding vortex of A-list celebrity, a level of fame for which nothing could have prepared her. Their romance was not a quiet, private affair. It was a front-page obsession. They were the new golden couple, and their every move was chronicled by a media fascinated by the pairing of the world's biggest movie star and this striking, enigmatic Australian newcomer. On Christmas Eve of 1990, just months after meeting, they were married in a private, secretive ceremony in Telluride, Colorado. For Nicole Kidman, the shy girl from Sydney, life had changed irrevocably. She had not just married a man, she had married a global institution, and in doing so, she had stepped into the most complex and demanding role of her life, the role of Mrs. Tom Cruise. For the next decade, their marriage would define her public identity. They were Hollywood's ultimate power couple, a fixture on every red carpet, their combined star power creating a blinding glare. But within this partnership there was a clear, often unspoken hierarchy. He was the sun. She was the beautiful, elegant planet in his orbit. Outside, Nicole Kidman was living a fairy tale, a symbol of glamour and romance. But inside, a quiet battle was being waged, a battle against the suffocating shadow of her husband's fame, a battle for her own artistic identity. The gilded cage was beautiful, but it was a cage nonetheless. Her early career in Hollywood was a constant struggle against this perception. While she worked steadily, her own formidable talent was often overshadowed. She co-starred with her husband again in Ron Howard's sweeping historical epic Far and Away, 1992, a visually stunning film that attempted to capitalize on their real-life chemistry, but was a box office disappointment. She worked with acclaimed directors in films like Billy Bathgate, 1991, and Malice, 1993. But she was frequently dismissed by critics in the industry as little more than a beautiful accessory to her husband's career. The media narrative was relentless and reductive. She was Tom's wife, the tall, quiet Australian who had captured the heart of the world's biggest star. This narrative, however, failed to recognize the fierce intellectual ambition that was driving her. While the world focused on her marriage, Kidman was quietly and deliberately building one of the most interesting and daring resumes of any actress of her generation. She was not content to be the decorative wife. She was an artist, and she began to fight for roles that would prove it. The turning point, the first major act of artistic rebellion, came in 1995 with Gus Van Sant's dark, satirical comedy To Die For. In the film, she played Suzanne Stone Moretto, a pathologically ambitious, morally bankrupt weather girl who will do anything, including orchestrating the murder of her husband, to become a television star. The role was a dangerous, audacious choice. It was a character that was funny, vicious, and utterly devoid of redeeming qualities. Kidman's performance was a revelation. She used her own experience of being under the media's microscope to inform the character's toxic blend of chipper, all-American optimism, and sociopathic narcissism. It was a deeply intelligent meta-performance that was both a brilliant character study and a sharp critique of a fame-obsessed culture. Not just an actor, Nicole Kidman was an architect, and with this role she began to construct a new identity for herself. The performance stunned critics and forced the industry to look past her famous husband and see her for what she was, a brilliant, daring actress with a formidable range. She won her first Golden Globe for the performance, a critical validation that was a crucial step in her fight for her own artistic identity. The marriage itself was a complex, often opaque entity. They adopted 2 children, Isabella and Connor, and presented a united, if intensely private, front to the world. A significant and often publicly debated element of their life together was Cruz's deep involvement in the Church of Scientology. Kidman, who had been raised in a liberal intellectual household and whose father was a psychologist, found herself immersed in this new, controversial, and highly secretive world. While she rarely spoke about it publicly, it was clear that Scientology was a central, non-negotiable part of her husband's life, and by extension her own. This added another layer of mystery and speculation to their already intensely scrutinized partnership. Their final collaboration, Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, became a legendary, almost mythical production. The famously meticulous director demanded an unprecedented level of commitment, with a shoot that stretched for a grueling, record-breaking 15 months. The film was an explicit, psychologically torturous exploration of a marriage unraveling through jealousy, fantasy, and sexual secrets. For a real-life married couple to subject themselves to such an intense, invasive process was an act of extreme artistic courage. They were forced to plumb the darkest depths of their own relationship for the sake of the art. While both actors maintained that the film did not cause the end of their marriage, the timing was eerie. The long, exhausting shoot and the dark, psychological territory it explored seemed to be a harbinger of the real-life drama that was about to unfold. The decade of Tom and Nicole, the era that had defined her entire adult life, was about to come to a sudden, shocking, and globally publicized end. The end came with a shocking and brutal finality. In February 2001, just after their 10th wedding anniversary, the couple's publicist released a terse, blindsiding statement announcing their separation. Tom Cruise filed for divorce 2 days later, citing irreconcilable differences. For the world, it was a seismic event, the end of a Hollywood era. For Nicole Kidman, it was a complete and utter shock. She would later reveal that she had believed their marriage was perfect, that the announcement came as a shock to her system. She was, by her own account, completely blindsided, left to grapple with the sudden, inexplicable implosion of her entire adult life in the full, merciless glare of the global media. The aftermath was a feeding frenzy. The tabloids went into overdrive, churning out a relentless stream of speculation. What had gone wrong? The theories were endless, but most of them orbited 2 central suns: her burgeoning career and the ever-present enigmatic influence of Scientology. Had her own rising star eclipsed his? Was she no longer willing to play the supportive wife? Had she resisted a deeper indoctrination into the Church of Scientology, creating an unforgivable rift? The truth remained locked behind a wall of carefully worded legal statements and enigmatic silence. Cruise would famously tell an interviewer, "She knows why, and I know why," a statement that only fueled more speculation. Kidman, for her part, maintained a dignified, if heartbroken, silence. Compounding the emotional devastation of the divorce was a secret, personal tragedy. Shortly after the separation, Kidman suffered a miscarriage. It was a profound, aching loss, one that she would not speak about in detail for years. But it added an almost unbearable layer of grief to an already public humiliation. The family she had so carefully built was gone. Her two adopted children, who had been raised within the Church of Scientology, would reportedly drift further into their father's world, creating a painful distance. At 33 years old, Nicole Kidman was alone, her personal life in ruins, her future uncertain. The world watched, waiting to see what would become of the beautiful, statuesque woman who was no longer Mrs. Tom Cruise. What happened next was one of the most remarkable artistic transformations in modern Hollywood history. Instead of retreating, instead of collapsing under the weight of her grief and the intense public scrutiny, Kidman channeled her pain directly into her work. She embarked on a period of ferocious, almost manic creativity, a 2-year run of films that would not only redefine her career but would permanently establish her as one of the greatest actresses of her generation. It was an act of profound artistic alchemy, transforming the lead of her personal tragedy into the gold of her professional triumph. The first salvo in this artistic rebirth was Baz Luhrmann's wildly inventive, anachronistic musical extravaganza, Moulin Rouge, 2001. As Satine, the beautiful tragic courtesan and star of the Parisian cabaret, Kidman was a revelation. The role required her to sing, to dance, and to radiate a kind of incandescent old Hollywood star power that had been largely absent from her more restrained earlier work. The production was physically grueling. She fractured a rib twice during the demanding dance sequences. But her performance was luminous, a perfect blend of high camp glamour and heartbreaking vulnerability. The film was a global sensation, a critical and commercial hit that earned 8 Academy Award nominations, including Kidman's first-ever nomination for Best Actress. The world was suddenly seeing a new Nicole Kidman, a fearless, multi-talented movie musical star. Just a few months later, she did a complete 180-degree turn starring in Alejandro Amenabar's chilling, atmospheric ghost story, The Others, 2001. As Grace Stewart, a tightly wound, devoutly religious mother living in a fog-shrouded mansion in the aftermath of World War II, Kidman delivered a performance of exquisite, tightly coiled tension. It was the antithesis of her work in Moulin Rouge. It was quiet, internal, and deeply unsettling. The film was another massive box office success, grossing over $200 million worldwide and proving her commercial viability as a solo star. The 1-2 punch of Moulin Rouge and The Others in a single year was a stunning display of versatility and power. She had not just survived the divorce, she was artistically thriving in its wake, liberated from the constraints, both real and perceived, of her former life. She was now actively seeking out the most challenging roles she could find, working with the world's most acclaimed directors. She collaborated with Lars von Trier on the experimental and confrontational Dogville, 2003. And with Anthony Minghella on the sweeping Civil War epic Cold Mountain, 2003. But the role that would cement her legacy, the one that would take her to the absolute pinnacle of her profession, required her to completely erase her own famous face. It was the role of the brilliant, tormented author Virginia Woolf in Stephen Daldry's masterful adaptation of the novel, The Hours, 2002. The physical transformation was shocking. wearing a prosthetic nose that dramatically altered her features and adopting the hunched, weary posture of a woman battling severe mental illness. She was utterly unrecognizable. Her performance was a deep, internal, and profoundly moving portrait of genius and despair. It was quiet, subtle work, conveyed through the flicker of an eye, the slightest tremor in her voice. It was the work of an artist at the absolute peak of her powers, a performance that was destined to bring her back to the Oscar stage, not as a nominee, but as a victor. The 75th Academy Awards ceremony in March 2003 was not just an awards show. It was the public coronation of Nicole Kidman. When her name was read out, it felt like an inevitability, a just and fitting conclusion to one of the most remarkable post-divorce comebacks in Hollywood history. As she stood on the stage clutching the golden Oscar, her emotional, heartfelt speech acknowledged the profound personal and global turmoil of the times. The win was a definitive statement from the industry. She was not a satellite star. She was a celestial body in her own right, a performer of immense depth and courage. The Oscar for the Hours was the ultimate validation, permanently erasing the Mrs. Tom Cruise moniker and replacing it with Academy Award winner Nicole Kidman. In the years following her Oscar win, Kidman entered a new phase of her career. She was now one of the most respected and in-demand actresses in the world, with the freedom to choose any project she desired. She continued to make bold, often non-commercial choices, working with acclaimed auteurs like Lars von Trier on the experimental and confrontational Dogville, 2003, and Jonathan Glazer on the haunting drama Birth, 2004. While some of these films were divisive, they cemented her reputation as a fearless artist, more interested in challenging herself and her audience than in chasing box office success. She balanced these art house projects with successful mainstream films like the epic Cold Mountain, 2003, for which she received another Golden Globe nomination, and the political thriller The Interpreter, 2005, where she starred opposite Sean Penn. But while her professional life was thriving, her personal life was in a state of quiet searching. The whirlwind of her divorce and subsequent artistic triumph had passed, leaving a void. She was a global superstar, critically revered and financially secure, but she was also a single woman who yearned for the partnership and family life that had been so abruptly taken from her. In 2005, at a G-Day USA event in Los Angeles, an event celebrating prominent Australians, she met the person who would author the next and most enduring chapter of her personal life, the New Zealand-born, Australian-raised country music superstar Keith Urban. Their connection was not the high-wattage, supernova-like ignition of her first marriage. It was a quieter, more tentative, and more mature meeting of two souls who understood the pressures of a life lived in the public eye. Urban, a recovering addict, was a man of deep sensitivity and artistic integrity. In him, Kidman found a partner who was not intimidated by her success but celebrated it, a man who shared her Australian roots and her down-to-earth sensibilities. They were married in a beautiful candlelit ceremony in Sydney in June 2006. It was not a Hollywood spectacle but a heartfelt, personal celebration. It seemed that Kidman had finally found her safe harbor. However, just 4 months into their marriage, their new life was put to a severe test. Urban, who had struggled with cocaine and alcohol addiction for years, relapsed. In a moment of profound courage and trust, he confessed to his new wife that he was out of control and needed help. Instead of fleeing the marriage, Kidman, with the memory of her own recent trauma still fresh, staged a family-led intervention. She canceled her promotional duties for an upcoming film and flew back to be by his side as he checked into the Betty Ford Center. It was an extraordinary act of love and commitment, a public declaration that she would stand by her husband through his darkest days. Her steadfast support during his recovery forged an unbreakable bond between them. a partnership founded not on the fantasy of perfection, but on the real-life challenges of healing and mutual support. This new, resilient partnership brought Kidman the personal joy she had long craved. In 2008, at the age of 41, she gave birth to their first daughter, Sunday Rose. 2 years later, they welcomed their second daughter, Faith Margaret, via surrogacy. Motherhood was a role she embraced with a deep and profound passion. The woman who had lost one family in the harsh glare of the public spotlight had now, on her own terms, built another, one grounded in love, recovery, and a fierce desire for privacy. As her personal life flourished, her professional ambition took a new, powerful turn. In the 2010s, as the film industry increasingly focused on superhero franchises, Kidman, like many of her A-list peers, saw a new frontier for complex adult drama, television. But she did not just want to act in it, she wanted to create it. She formed her own production company, Blossom Films, with a mission to champion female-driven stories. Her first major project was the 2017 HBO limited series Big Little Lies, starring alongside Reese Witherspoon, Laura Dern, and Shailene Woodley. Kidman not only delivered a searing, Emmy-winning performance as Celeste Wright, a beautiful, wealthy lawyer trapped in a violent, abusive marriage, but she also served as a primary executive producer. Big Little Lies was a cultural phenomenon. It was a ratings smash, a critical darling, and a catalyst for national conversations about domestic violence and the power of female friendship. For Kidman, it was a monumental achievement. The series' massive success and the numerous awards it garnered, including the Emmy for Outstanding Limited Series, transformed her from a movie star into a television powerhouse. She was no longer just an actress for hire. She was a creator, a producer with the power to greenlight her own projects and shape the stories that were being told. She had entered a new, and perhaps the most powerful phase of her long and storied career. The seismic success of Big Little Lies marked a definitive turning point, not just for Nicole Kidman, but for the entire television landscape. She had proven that A-list Oscar-winning movie stars could not only transition to the small screen but could dominate it, bringing a level of cinematic quality and narrative complexity that was previously rare. Blossom Films, her production company, became a major industry player, a go-to home for prestigious female-centric literary adaptations. She followed up her triumph with a string of acclaimed and popular television projects, solidifying her new role as a creative powerhouse. In The Undoing, 2020, another HBO hit, she starred opposite Hugh Grant in a glossy psychological thriller that captivated a massive global audience. In 9 Perfect Strangers, 2021, she underwent another startling physical transformation to play a mysterious and charismatic wellness guru. With each project, she not only delivered a compelling, nuanced performance but also demonstrated her savvy as a producer, identifying compelling stories and packaging them into high-end, event television. She had created a new career model for herself, one that gave her unprecedented creative control and the ability to shape her own destiny. A stark contrast to her early years as a young actress subject to the whims of the studio system and the shadow of her husband's fame. This television dominance did not mean she abandoned the cinema. She continued to work with acclaimed film directors, carefully choosing roles that interested her artistically. She received her 5th Academy Award nomination in 2022 for her warm, hilarious, and surprisingly touching portrayal of the legendary comedian Lucille Ball in Aaron Sorkin's Being the Ricardos. The performance was a testament to her enduring skill and versatility, capturing the essence of a beloved icon while also revealing the sharp, steely businesswoman beneath the comedic persona. She was no longer just a dramatic actress. She was a master of her craft, capable of moving seamlessly between genres and mediums. Her personal life, once a source of global speculation and tabloid fodder, has settled into a quiet, contented rhythm. Her marriage to Keith Urban has endured, becoming one of Hollywood's most stable and supportive partnerships. She has spoken openly about their shared journey, their commitment to their family, and the quiet, normal life they have built together in Nashville, Tennessee, far from the epicenter of the Hollywood machine. She has found a way to be a global superstar and a present, hands-on mother, a balance she has fiercely protected. The legacy of Nicole Kidman is a masterclass in longevity, artistic evolution, and quiet, steely resilience. She is not a star who burned brightly and faded. She is a celestial body that has learned to change its orbit, to radiate different kinds of light over a career that has now spanned 5 decades. Her story is a profound narrative of self-reclamation. She began her Hollywood journey defined by others, by her striking looks, by her famous husband. She navigated a public and painful divorce that could have ended her career, but instead she used it as fuel for an artistic renaissance that established her as one of the finest actresses of her generation. She has survived the relentless sexism of the industry, the ageism that has curtailed the careers of so many of her peers, and the ever-changing tides of a business that is notoriously fickle. She did so by being smarter, by working harder, and by constantly challenging herself and the perceptions of those around her. She evolved from a movie star into an Emmy-winning television producer, from a muse for great directors to a powerful creative force in her own right. She is a symbol of artistic courage, a woman who has never shied away from difficult, often unlikable characters, who has used her own body and face as a canvas for some of the most memorable performances of our time. The final image of Nicole Kidman is not that of the ingenue in Days of Thunder or the heartbroken woman leaving a lawyer's office. It is the image of a powerful, self-possessed artist and producer in complete control of her craft and her narrative. She is a testament to the idea that a career and a life does not have to be defined by its explosive beginning or its moments of public crisis, but can be a long, steady, and ever-evolving journey of growth and discovery. She is, in the end, the quiet, determined survivor who won the marathon.